for my brother Anakin!
Welcome back to Disney Marvels for week of July 3rd, 2022. This is episode 183. Disney Marvels, the show about Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Muppets, Pixar, 20th Century, the parks, and much, much more. If it has to do with Disney, it's fair game. I'm your host, Matthew Graken. So we got this survey this week, and being that it's Independence Day weekend here in the United States, the summertime is upon us, celebrations are abound, and I couldn't think of a better way to kind of celebrate the summer season, America's birthday, than what is known as the Big White Way, Broadway. Broadway is Disney theatrical, because it's not just Broadway. There's the touring shows, there's West End, there's so much out there. So my question was, what is your favorite Disney theatrical show? Disney, Broadway, West End, whatever it be. Disney theatrical. And the choices I gave initially were Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Mary Poppins, or other, because there is so many different shows that could have been on there that I couldn't list them all. Like Little Mermaid, Newsies, Aida, Frozen, can't forget Frozen, Tarzan, Hunchback, there's Hercules. Not too many people know about Hercules. Hercules is going around or coming out. So you got all those options. I couldn't list them all. Aladdin even. But someone did put Aladdin. So someone did do a write-in for Aladdin. And here's how it broke down. And that was just on the Facebook group. And yeah, that's the nice thing about Facebook. They let write-ins where Twitter, unfortunately, does not. But anyway, to the results. The survey, the poll's in. And survey says, Others gets 7% of the vote. Aladdin gets 14% of the votes. And like I said, that was only a write-in on Facebook. So only on the Facebook end, and it still brought in 14% of the votes. Mary Poppins. I forgot about Mary Poppins. I jumped ahead to Aladdin and got excited. Mary Poppins also, unfortunately, only got 7% of the votes. So other 7%, Mary Poppins 7%, Aladdin 14%. And then up top, we have Beauty and the Beast at 36%. But we also have Lion King at 36%. Lion King and Beauty and the Beast tied, and they're both fantastic. And I can understand the argument for both. Both wonderful productions, wonderful scores, wonderful shows. So there you have it. You have spoken. And Beauty and the Beast and Lion King are your champions per se. But no real runaway clear-cut winner here. There's a lot of diversity amongst the theatrical shows voted for. And I love it. I love this diversity. There's so many people. Oh, this one and this one and this one and this one. Thank you for all who voted and had your voice heard. And make sure your voice is heard. Your voice counts and your vote does matter. Next weekend, look for the survey coming out on the Facebook group and on Twitter. If you're not following us on either one, please join us. Join the conversation. Try to have a lot of fun. Put some news out there. Have some conversation. On Twitter, it's at Disney Marvels. On Facebook, the Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/Disney Marvels podcast. So join us either one. Join us on both, because sometimes you get different content on both of them. Join us on both and be heard. And on that bombshell, we'll be back after these words from our friends and sponsors.
Hello there, Disney Marvels podcast friends. This is Anthony King, host of the new podcast, Force Ghost Conversations. Each week, this show will be your home for cozy, deep dive discussions into all things Star Wars. We will break down the latest news, announcements, movies, TV shows, comics, books, and everything else in a galaxy far, far away. We can be found on every major podcast listening site, and you can also join the conversation with us via Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search Force Ghost Conversations. We look forward to having you join us around the campfire then for some Force Ghost conversations, and may the Force be with you.
And now, on with the show.
Hey, how about that nutty Star Wars bar? Can you forget all the creatures in there? And hey, Darth Vader in that black and evil mask, did he scare you as much as he scared me? Star Wars!
Even though Kenobi has come and gone, I cannot help but talk more about it. I want to talk about the series in a whole. I've been talking about the bits and the pieces and this episode and that episode. And last week I touched on the series a little bit, but I think this series gave us so much to talk about that it deserves at least one final episode. And much like the surprise at the end of Kenobi, where Force Ghosts come and talk to Kenobi, I had to bring my own Force Ghost, or a Force Ghost with me to this episode. It is Anthony King from Force Ghost Conversations himself. Anthony, welcome aboard to your first time of hopeful many, on Disney Marvels. How are you doing?
Hello there. Happy to be here on Disney Marvels podcast. Long-time listener, first-time joiner of the show, and I am ready to talk about this wonderful series and just all the great stuff that's happening at Star Wars these days.
Oh, well, in that aspect, everybody, pull up your easy chair, get yourself ready, get some water, get yourself some coffee, and settle in. We will be going for at least 16 hours today, I believe.
And that would be very easy to accomplish with everything that's gone on the last couple of weeks in Star Wars.
This year has been a bountiful cornucopia of Star Wars goodness and the stuff that they keep giving us and things that we have to look forward to. We had Book of Boba Fett, we had now Kenobi, we have Bad Batch, Andor, Vision Season 2 was announced, we had Celebration in Europe next year in good old London. We have just so much that they've been now telling us that's coming. Where for a while it was, well, we had a movie and now we got this, and there wasn't too much. Or you got Mandalorian now.
Oh yeah,
that was really it. And now it's just they're gifting us with so much, and it's a wonderful, wonderful time to be a fan of Star Wars, and it's also a wonderful time to become a fan. If you haven't before, if it wasn't something that you found interesting, there is so much more I find to Star Wars now than just the movies that everyone knows of one way or another. That you can find probably easily something that you can kind of connect with.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I say this just about every week on my podcast. It's 2022 is the year of Star Wars. I mean, we're only halfway through the year now, and just around the corner is Andor, and I believe Bad Batch will be airing concurrently with it.
September.
And golly gee, with all the other books and comics that are coming out at the same time. I know High Republic Phase 2 is supposed to start in October. It's just an amazing time to be a Star Wars fan. And then even looking beyond to 2023, there's so much in the pipeline for all ages, right? Just even the little younglings that are getting involved in the Star Wars universe to start with. All the way up to us hard-seasoned fans, looking forward to seeing, our friends, the Mandalorian and Ahsoka, come back. Ahsoka in her first time being in a live-action role, leading her own series. So I cannot wait for all of it to happen. And, Lucasfilm's even dipping their toes into other things with Willow and another Indiana Jones film coming out. So this is a great time to be in the Star Wars and Lucasfilm bubble of it all.
Oh, I'm looking forward to Indy 5. I was watching one of the channels, the Paramount Network or whoever it was, had was running a marathon of the Indiana Jones movies, and of course I popped them on and just love every minute of it all. I love Indiana Jones, most of it, the Indiana Jones. And I'm excited for the next chapter, and it's hard. Harrison's getting older, and how do you replace someone like that? But at the same time, you want to keep the franchise going. It's this weird position that they're finding themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
Something I always wish they would do was reboot the Young Indiana Jones series that they had back from the 80s, 90s.
The early 90s, yeah.
That I absolutely loved it, and I thought they did a superb job with the production of those shows, and you had the two different crews going, so they were able to produce more of them because you had the young one, and then you had the teenager one.
Right.
But then they also came out with these really good series of books that went along with it, which I really enjoyed. And I was never much of a reader. I'm still not much of a reader, but I wasn't much of a reader then. But I read those books. Those books got me reading, because I just enjoyed them so much. So, I more Indiana Jones, wonderful thing. And these ones will be under the Disney umbrella and not someone else's umbrella for the time being.
Yes. Thankfully, now it's under the Disney umbrella. I know they just unleashed a wave of merchandise on the Disney Shop Disney website for basically all the main artifacts, I guess, so to speak, of the Indiana Jones saga. So I picked up the Holy Grail this past week.
Now, here's a question I want to ask you.
Mm-hmm, sure.
So I was looking at that. My friend sent me a link, and I was looking at this stuff. I'm like, wait a second. Indy's jacket there. To me, it looked like the jacket was black, and I always remember, and I could be wrong, but I remember Indy's jacket being a dark brown. Would you think of that?
So I would agree that the main picture that they showed, it was more on the darker side, but on the subsequent pictures where they had like a model showing it off, it did look more on the weathered brown side. So maybe the one that we see Harrison wearing is a bit more weathered, so to speak, from the adventures that he's been on. So this is more of the pristine version, like when you first buy it off the rack, I guess. But yes, it was a steep $400 that I could not muster to part ways with at this point.
No, back in my youth, I went to London Fog outlet and got myself a bomber jacket, which was almost identical, and I still have it to this day. The sleeves are a little short, and maybe my daughter steals it from me. But yes, I have a jacket like that I have always passed off as my archaeologist jacket. I found a picture of myself wearing that and a hat that I picked up. I have to send it to you.
Oh, so please do. Please do.
Kick out of it. But yeah, I saw those. I thought it was great. When I was in Disney World in August in the studios. Now, the store is primarily Marvel stuff, but there was one corner that was dedicated to Indiana Jones stuff. They had an action figure and a few other odds and ends. There was just one wall. I mean, just the fact that there's the one wall. I just like, this is, as a little kid, I wish this was here then. It's hard to justify a 40-something-year-old man buying those things. Not that I would have any shame in that.
Absolutely not.
No. Explain it to my wife. But the fact that we were finally getting more Indiana Jones. I mean, there was always the outlet, the little one kiosk by the Indiana Jones Stunts Spectacular, which, but now that it's spreading past that. Good stuff.
Absolutely. And, while we're still on the topic of Indiana Jones here, I liked your kind of wondering or question that you posed there of how to grow or continue the saga that is Indiana Jones in some way, shape, or form. And something that I've always been a proponent of is, Lucasfilm over the last 15, 20 years now has been really good at their animation studios, whether it be the Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, Bad Batch. Who knows what they're planning in the future when it comes to all this stuff. I always thought that like an Indiana Jones centered animated series, kind of set in the World War II era, explaining all of his adventures that he did fighting the Germans during that time period, would be great, because then there's so many voice actors out there that try to impersonate Harrison all the time, whether it be Han Solo or other characters that he's done in his career. That's a great way to continue telling stories in that universe without having to really recast Harrison in a movie capacity or even a TV show, right? I think it'd be a pretty high reward, low risk there for them.
I think that's an easy answer. And there's so many adventures that you kind of know about or have heard about, but not ever seen. Some of it's been put to books, and then there's the other stuff. So why wouldn't you? I mean, maybe they could finally answer how he held his breath for the 3 days that the submarine was going across the Atlantic.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. But see, I always assumed he just kind of snuck in through the hatch and just kind of hung out there and no one noticed him. But that's my justification in my head. But yeah, there's so much they could do with that beyond necessary recasting. I think their intents after Crystal Skull was have Shia trying to take over. Obviously that's not going to pan out as well as they were hoping. So, plan B.
Plan B, plan C. Lucasfilm is open to opportunities for future franchises and all that stuff. So we'll see what happens with 5. I've got nothing but big expectations for it, and we'll see what happens.
Not at all. Yeah, I mean, and Harrison could still command the screen. I mean, from what we saw in Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. I mean, even the brief part in Rise of Skywalker, he commanded that screen.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, geez, one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars right there is that.
Oh, absolutely. That was such a powerful scene.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether you like the movie or not, you have to admit that there was such a gravitas to that scene that you just, like you said, out of all of Star Wars, that is a very powerful and prominent scene right there. So, So, I think we're setting a record here. We're, just over 10 minutes and we're already off topic. Good to go. We're, you're first time on the show and you already know how it's run.
That's right.
But I do want to bring up one other thing. You were at Celebration.
I was, yeah, very fortunate to have been there.
That I am jealous. I'm glad you got the experience to go, and I know you enjoyed it a lot. You've talked about it on your show. You're still talking about it on your show because it was that special of
it was,
an occasion. Yeah. Trust me, I would be too. Were you in the room when it happened, when they dropped the Ahsoka trailer?
Unfortunately, I was not in the room for that trailer drop. I was only in the room for the big Lucasfilm showcase panel that was the first day on that Thursday, where they really dropped a lot of the major news and announcements for upcoming things. John Williams, of course, came out at the end of that performance and then played not only the Obi-Wan theme for the first time, he played the Imperial March and also did the Indiana Jones theme, and when they brought out Harrison Ford onto the stage, and we did a great rounding ovation for both Harrison and John at that moment. But and then of course, being in that room at that time, it allowed me to come back later that evening to see the first 2 episodes of Kenobi on this big screen in this theater-esque experience with all these other Star Wars fans, and basically it was a red carpet world premiere of the Kenobi show. So to really be a part of that, I mean, that alone was worth the price of admission. I mean, frankly, the John Williams concert that we got there for free was the real, I said to my wife afterwards, this is really what we paid for here. Like, it's all of our, the 4-day passes that we paid for. This covers it all right here. Like, we'd pay this plus some in order to see John live at any other venue, right? But now that we get to do other Star Wars things throughout the course of this weekend, like everything else is icing on the cake.
And not just that, not knowing at that time that he will be retiring. So this is one of the last performances in a public setting that, anyone will get to see.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I about lost it as soon as they were like, we're Kathleen Kennedy said something like we have to acknowledge a very special birthday that just happened recently, and something like that. I was like, this is John Williams, and lo and behold, they pulled up the curtain, and this whole full orchestra that was behind the stage somehow we were not prepared for whatsoever just strolled their way up onto the main part of the stage. Johnny Williams walked his way across the stage and got up on that podium and went straight into the Obi-Wan Kenobi theme. So it was a lot of emotions happening at that moment in time, and it was truly incredible.
See, what you did not realize was that entire orchestra was created by ILM. They were not actually there. It was just all digital effects.
Probably. It was probably the volume, right? They filmed this all in the volume, and it's just how good 3D technology is these days.
You just didn't realize it. It was that so convincing that you didn't realize in person that they weren't actually there.
I mean, I believe it the way they put off the effects in the Kenobi series and the Mandalorian, and I know other movies and shows are using the volume technology. So, hey, that's in the very spirit of what Star Wars is, right? Even back to the beginning of the first film, is Star Wars has always pushed the envelope of what it is to be cinema, what technology is available. George Lucas literally created digital cinema as we know it. Yeah. And that would be another step forward in the evolution of ILM and Lucasfilm.
I mean, and I said this last week, the effects for the void that they used in Kenobi. Not the void, yes. The
volume, yep.
Volume, thank you. Void is the video game part. The volume is the
yeah.
You can't come up with there's so much. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. You had to use V for both of them.
Yes.
But the effects rendering for Kenobi was so much more advanced than what they used in Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and it's just like, and there's not that much time spread out between them, and just how much that has grown. I mean, the effects work in Kenobi was for me. I mean, correct me if you think differently. Spectacular. It was beyond anything that we've seen to date on any of the other series.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you and I are both in agreement on this one here. I think that even from Book of Boba Fett to Obi-Wan Kenobi, the effects have only gotten better, and they're continuing to get better. And, it makes me excited for Mando Season 3 and Ahsoka, right? 'Cause, frankly, the trajectory that they're going on is only getting better and better. So, I am excited to see what those shows look like and what their cinematography is, because something that I took away from the Kenobi series overall, and I think there's some other factors to it as well, whether it be the pacing and the writing, so on and so forth. But Kenobi, to me, was the most cinematic of all of the Disney Plus Star Wars series thus far, whether it be The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. Partially that's because I think due part to the writing, the Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett had this very much serialized episodic nature to their writing, whether it be like an adventure of the weeks, so to speak, right. Whereas Kenobi was a clear beginning, middle, and end point. So I think that had something to do with it, but just the look and the feel of the show overall was very much like I felt like I was in a movie theater watching it every week, which is astounding.
Yeah, something that I'm not sure if I mentioned on the show. I mentioned it to people in person. On friend of the podcast, Jim Hill's looking at Lucasfilm. His new co-host Brian mentioned that there's a difference between Solo and Kenobi. Solo is a multi-part series put together as a movie, where Kenobi is a movie spread out over a 6-part series.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting thing.
When you think of that, it's Solo. There's multiple segments that here's this part of the story, here's that part. You can extract episodes, as it were, out of that. Where Kenobi just kind of, it does flow one through the other one very much in a cinematic way, just over almost 6 hours of a 6 hour movie versus 2.5 to 3. And this is a question that I posed last week, and let me pose it to you.
Okay, great.
So Obi-Wan Kenobi is now done. So do you think this story has done well as a 6-part series? So almost, like I said, 5.5, almost 6 hours worth of film, for lack of a better term, content, or would have done well as the initial intended 2.5, 3 hour movie?
Ooh, I mean, it's a good question. I think personally, I prefer what we got for the TV series, and I think I'm going to explain this in a couple of ways here. Whereas that, first and foremost, I'm a prequel fanatic, right? I think that's a very fair statement here. I grew up with the prequels; they are my bread and butter. Star Wars.
Don't hate me too much for my rankings.
It's okay. Like, those films are very important to me, and they still are. They've forged who I am as a Star Wars fan, and the fact that I get more time with those characters, especially those actors that portrayed those characters, bringing them back into these iconic roles gives a lot of credence to those films and makes them very important, because I know there's still a lot of Star Wars fans that disregard them and don't include them at all in their rewatches. So I think it just continues to add importance to that time period and that era and those movies, and that's something that I really appreciate from this series overall. So that's kind of one point there, but something that really stands out for me as I've watched the series overall is how important and impactful to me that the side characters in Kenobi were. So whether it be Roken, Tala, Ned B, Haja, even the Grand Inquisitor and the Fifth Brother, right? All of these side characters were just so well done, in my opinion, so well written. They had so much nuance to them, and I'm so excited to see where their stories go. But if it was just a simple 2.5 hour movie that would have been originally planned or put into theaters, right, I don't think you get as much time or you get to delve into the stories of these characters as much. And now that I think we're for the better having these characters fleshed out a bit more, and I think there's a push for a Reva series, or to see if Roken shows up in Andor, where these characters go. I think there's a lot of added benefits to the longer form storytelling that was a part of this, and I think Lucasfilm too is much more thrilled about the week to week, because this dominated the online conversations for every week. Like, you couldn't go on social media, at least in the channels that I follow, and not be spoiled at all to every Wednesday. Like, I had to avoid it until the benefit of getting COVID was I could watch the episodes right away at the right time. I didn't have to wait and agonizingly until I got home from work, because I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. I'm a big Star Wars fan, but I gotta prioritize my sleep and earning a living before I can support my Star Wars fandom.
4:30 in the morning myself. I'm not waking up at 3 o'clock.
Exactly. Like, I did it once for The Mandalorian, and I said, oof, I can't do this again.
I'm too old for that.
Know your own limits, exactly. So, it went head to head against Stranger Things, and beyond that first weekend where Stranger Things released all 7 episodes, Kenobi was dominating the conversation week in and week out. So frankly, I think the story bits would have been the same. So the arc of Kenobi from where he begins to where he ends in the series would have been the same. I think Vader's would have been the same as well. I think all the big cameos at the end would have been there as well. So I think all the major plot points would have been there. And of course, with a 2-hour movie, I think the visual effects probably would have been more pristine for the cinema quality. But I think at the end of the day, Lucasfilm is thrilled with the product that they've gotten. And I think that this will give them more confidence moving forward with other big name projects. So I think they're very confident going into a Ahsoka series, and who knows what they have in the pipeline beyond. But I think this series really showed them the power that the Disney Plus medium can have.
Well, I mean, you have the one that that's really tickled my fancy is the Acolytes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who knows what really is going to entail in that series? They've been very mute on the details overall, but like sky's the limit for really
Yeah,
what
because I
they can
think
create
that
with.
one goes back to the Old Republic,
I think it's set
somewhere
100
around there.
years before the Phantom Menace, so it should be
Yeah.
the waning days of the High Republic.
So that's going to be interesting. I'm just hoping my yellow lightsaber makes more of an appearance. Um,
Fingers crossed.
yeah, I love me some yellow lightsabers. Um, so yeah, we shall see. And this is what I'm saying. There's so much content coming out, and also to think that when Ewan McGregor actually, and I love the fact that he came to Lucasfilm saying we got to do this because I
Hmm.
think that helped his portrayal. Because I think Ewan did such a fantastic job. He did a good job in the prequels. I'm not going to take that away from him. He did a good job. He did a
Hmm.
fantastic job in this. Because
Totally. Totally.
the torture on his face and the um, dilemmas and just you, way that an actor portrays something really does a lot. And he really put himself into this role. When fighting with the lightsabers, there was just that much more tension there.
Hmm. Yeah.
And just the way that he said lines, and just carried himself. It was very, you could tell that this was a passion project for him.
Absolutely. I mean, even being at Celebration, you could tell that he loved being around fans who were giving him the energy that justified him putting that energy into the project. Um, I think and I think for all the actors too that participated in the prequels, like the negativity that surrounded those films at that time was daunting to them, and it probably waned on their experience at the time. And now that people like me that were kids back then that are now
Hmm.
older, and we have stronger voices now in the community, and we're going to these conventions and we're meeting with these actors and people, and we're telling them how important those films are to us and what they meant to us back then, right? They're now feeling that energy that they didn't felt back then, and now they have this renewed vigor and enthusiasm to continue on telling these stories. And you're right, I think that's a great point that Ewan's involvement in this series is palpable. Like you can tell all the emotional beats that he did in his acting, and I think really the volume helps out too a lot in getting those performances out of these characters. Because
Oh yeah,
I know he talked a lot about back in the day it was all blue screen, and it's very hard to do acting when you're looking
you're
at a
staring
blue
at a
screen
tennis
and
ball.
trying to imagine, yeah, you're looking at a tennis ball or trying to imagine what the scene looks like, and then you see the movie 2 years later and you're like, that's not what I had in my head. So actually being in the environments is revolutionary for these actors, right? And I think we see the benefits of that in Kenobi firsthand.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and these watching episodes from the 70s where they were really starting using the green screen technology and kind of looking at you could tell that they're trying to picture something that technology was really new at that point. That they had no clue what kind of environment they were in, and trying to make the best of it, and being either sitting on a box pretending they're floating in the air, or
Oh yeah.
it just, you look back now and goes, wait a second, that how is this the same technology that we're kind of using now? And
Hmm.
things advance, things change. But now the fact that they're basically walking in a giant video game really changes the perspective, because the actors know the environment that they're in. They're not having to pretend in their head, and then hopefully what they have in their head matches what the director has in their head, which the head of the special effects unit has in their head, and the art department has in their head. That's a lot of heads to try and get together on the same page. And especially when you're talking science fiction, the sky's the limit on what it could be. Going back to Doctor Who, someone was saying, to design a spaceship is one thing, but to design an invisible spaceship takes a lot of genius.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, to your point that you're the prime example, and I'm telling this to other people, that this is where we're at now with the prequels. And my expectations and my hope is that as much as people have bashed now the sequel trilogy, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, my kids, when they are close to your age, in their 20s and their 30s, those films will finally get the respects. And, John Boyega, Daisy Ridley, Oscar Isaac, I mean, he's already got so much. But all of them, Adam Driver, get the respect that they deserve for putting their craft on the screen and continuing the saga, because we wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for them doing that. Star Wars was almost a dead franchise. I mean, you had some of this stuff in the animation, but there wasn't really much going on in the theater. And then we get The Force Awakens. And whoever wants to rip it apart, it is a solid film.
Absolutely. I love it.
It is beautifully shot. It is well written. It's got, and it just continues the universe. And just in those opening half hour has expanded what's going on in the Star Wars universe that we don't know about. Seeing those Star Destroyers crashed on Jakku. I want that story. At some point, I want that story. I want to see it on the big screen and told to me, because these massive ships, and they're crashed into the planet, into the sand. How? What happened here? So again, there's so much more stories out there that we haven't been told, and the beauty of these films is that they give you one story and then they open up 100 more.
Just tip of the iceberg storytelling. That's what Star Wars is all about.
And it is it's a wonderful thing, and I look forward to, like I said, those guys getting their due. Like Ewan McGregor's getting his due now, bringing it back to Kenobi, doing a fantastic job. Hayden Christensen donning back into the armor. I personally was one of the ones that I wasn't ready for them to meet in part 3. I know I've said this several times on the show. So for me, it wasn't as, I was a little more let down by the moment, where a lot of people got excited about it, and I can understand why.
Gotcha.
For me, I wanted them to build up more tension between them before that happened. I liked how part 5 played out, where it was that cat and mouse, where they almost met, and there's every moment they got it a bit closer and a bit closer, and you had a beautiful flashback. That, to me, that was what I envisioned the show was going to be more like. We still got it, and but the way that these things were shot, and the vision of the director, she had such a great eye for the cinematic in this, and the special effects, like with the lightsabers, how it lit up areas, and the color and the glow actually was effective. You played the Force Awaken, not Force Awaken, Fallen Order game.
Oh yeah,
you said, and it reminds me of at points you have to use your lightsaber to light the way and walk around. She brought that now to the screen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So seeing those connections, and just pardon me, the way it all played out, visually spectacular. I did have this discussion last week that I think, though, unfortunately, some parts of the writing was really strong. For me, I felt there was a couple of parts where they could have done a little bit better. Like the Inquisitors, I think towards the end got lost.
Oh, okay.
In the storytelling. Like the fifth brother was he was the matching piece to Reva, and the catalyst against her. And then he wasn't. After, was that 4? I think was the last time we saw him.
Yeah. He doesn't appear again after 4, and neither does, I think, the fourth sister, the other one that was popping around.
Right, and you didn't get much out of her either. So I thought that, with how cool these characters are, that I wanted more from them. Which in some ways, that's a good thing. You always want more, but other times you shouldn't be wanting that much more. So I wanted that much more of the Inquisitors because of just how cool these characters are, and you finally get them in person. We have them in Rebels, but I personally wanted them more in the live action too. So that I thought that was one part. But for me, again, I think the biggest one was Tala. I wanted so much out of that. I love that character. For the 2.5 episodes that we got her, absolutely grew to love that character.
She rocks, yeah.
And I get why they did what they did, but at the same time, I'm like, no, too soon.
Hey, you never know.
What do you think of Tala?
Look, Tala is great. I mean, we're in agreement here. Like, what she does for with these side characters, I always look at it from the perspective of what do they do to serve the main character's story.
Yep. And
Tala basically tells Obi-Wan, look, you gotta get your body not only needs to heal after the burning that Vader succumbs him to, but she's like, you gotta get your emotions and your mental state back in swing here. Like, you are a broken person. Sometimes you need someone to just tell you straight up how it is in order for you to recognize where the problem lies. And once they have that conversation, exactly, like that's what really puts Kenobi back on the right path there. Then he starts to really reclaim these pieces that make up the character that we see finally come fully realized. I would argue at the end of episode part 4, definitely in part 5 for sure. But she also has these great lessons in how to move on from the past, right? I think that's another big theme throughout this entire series is, for Obi-Wan especially, he's struggling to reconcile with the past. He's struggling to move on and grow and learn from the past and become something better and move and rise above what has come before him, right? And she has this great line, to the extent of, some scars, some wounds never heal, something like that. But it's what we do afterwards that really defines who we are, right? So she has that the blaster holster, right, that eventually becomes Leia's, where she marks for every person that she helped get through on the path, right? It's this great lesson of, like, we're not able to change the past, but what are we able to do for the future that we can really change and define. Like, what we do in the future is who we are now. Not our past doesn't define us. It's what we do in the future that defines who we are. And of course, she too, along with Ned B, has this great thematical element of actions speaking louder than words, and that's consistent throughout this series as well, right? Kenobi at the beginning is this person that literally has a Jedi walk right up to him, and he says, help me, and he's like, no, go away, bury your lightsaber in the sand, don't do anything, fly away, don't bother me, right? And then at the end, he's telling these people how much they matter, and he believes in them, and he's a leader once again, right? And all these elements play together here, and this really stems from Tala as a character, right? And let alone her great action sequences. Her stuff in part 4 are really great. It's when she's literally risking her life on the line just to save Leia.
That part where she's confronting the security guard.
Yes, and she's literally using her status as an Imperial officer to question, like, how dare you question why I shouldn't be allowed in here or where I'm at. And her conversation with Reva later then too, how she literally goes toe to toe with an Inquisitor. Amazing stuff.
Yes, that she did a fantastic job with that. And let me go back to the Inquisitors. So how do you feel they handled the Inquisitors? Did you get enough from them? Did you want more? Did you want less?
I think in overall, I think I'm okay with what we got. I would say I also didn't expect too much going into it. I had more of I think I got more than what I was expecting of these Inquisitor characters. I would have thought personally I would have gotten more of the Grand Inquisitor overall, but I think for the story, what played out and what happened, I think it works for me. I I will say in our household we've been using the line "Revenge does wonders for the will to live." We've been using that pretty frequently around here for whatever reason, whatever that says about us and me and my wife's relationship. We've been having fun with that one. So
Revenge is a dish best served.
we loved what we got out of them, frankly. The Grand Inquisitor was a big standout for me. Rupert Friend in that role, especially in Part 6. His you can tell he's tired of Vader's obsession with Kenobi. Just the nuances of his facial expressions really gave that away. And of course, he's like, we could take out the entire Path Network over here instead of one lone Jedi. But you can only climb up the ladder of leadership so much before, you got to have some self-preservation in yourself in order to make it to tomorrow, especially when you're a part of the dark side. I think you're onto something there about the fifth brother. I think, casting an actor of that caliber too, I would have expected maybe a little bit more screen time. But once Reva became quote unquote the Grand Inquisitor, his jockeying for position no longer served its purpose for the story. And who's to say where they go next, right? Reva's still out there. She could try and hunt down these Inquisitors again. Who knows? Again, the sky's the limit for these future stories that they've got in the works.
Yes. Yes, indeed. It's would you want a season 2, or are you satisfied where they are now?
No, this is like the $1 million question right here.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I will take a season 2, but I think I'm perfectly fine with where they left off. I think if I had to rank where I want a follow-up series to go, because I think there's definitely some opportunities for follow-up series here.
Oh yeah.
I would personally put probably a Reva series or something around Reva and some of these side characters, probably at the top there, because of that story of Reva and her character arc overall throughout the course of the series, and where we know she ends up and what she has to do is very fresh for Star Wars. And it's a very unique story where we have these villainous characters who have done heinous acts, and whenever they get redeemed or they come back to a light, or they do a good act afterwards, and they're no longer following this dark path anymore, they typically die, right? A la a Darth Vader, a Ben Solo. So now we have someone that actually lives, and they have to atone with their own past and have to forge a new way forward. Kind of similar in the vein of Kenobi, but with more heinous acts in their resume, so to speak. So I think that's personally at the top of my list. Something that I would put number 2 right underneath under that is I think there's more to explore in Vader in the timeline here. I think his defeat again at the hands of Kenobi begs itself for him to reassert his dominance and power. I think that would probably drive him wild. It clearly did, until the Emperor was like, "Are your thoughts clear on this? You served me, remember, right? You're not going off on this Kenobi hunt again, or we have some other things to do in order to solidify the power." And he's like, "Oh yes, you're right. I only serve you. Kenobi's forgotten."
Well, it was basically where I feel like Vader always threatens people. Here's the Emperor threatening Vader in the same way. That's although
you still have a use yet. I still need you, Vader. You need to go
get in line.
Order, get in line,
or else we'll deal with you in our own special way.
Exactly. So I think a trial of some sort for Vader to reassert his dominance and position with the dark side and reaffirm why he's doing what he's doing, right? I think that's very important in the Vader story to to keep in his mind as to like he needs this power. He needs to feed off of this energy, the hate, the suffering, the anger, right? All this is within the core of his being. I think that would be very interesting to see how he reacts and it moves forward after this devastating loss, I would imagine, in the back of his head.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, we do get some parts of Vader's continuing story in Rebels.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
yep.
and this is where I spoke last week about how if there was to be a season 2 or something stepping off from where we are now with the Kenobi series, we have to worry about, because these characters all show up in Rebels, so we have to worry about the crossover there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we get things a little bit interesting. Except for one character, which I never can pronounce his. I can't say his name. It starts with the R. You know who I'm talking. Roken,
yeah.
Look over my notes here quickly. Roken's character. This is the first we've met of him. We know no idea where he goes. I too am speculating. Do we see him again in Andor? Because time wise lines up perfectly. And just the hints I feel that were dropped, where Kenobi's going to him. People listen to you. You are a natural leader. People will follow you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ooh, so he can be someone important going forward. This is something that people are writing off that he's just a guest appearance and whatnot. I'm like, I think this is a potential building block.
You and I are both in agreement on this one too. I think Roken is again one of those standout characters, and I hope he appears in Andor. I hope he appears maybe in his own kind of thing. I definitely think it's possible. Maybe some more time in Andor might lead to a future story or two, build some more interest in the character or whatnot. And I think definitely there is something to be said about this kind of boots on the ground, non-force user leader of someone who I would imagine he goes into the rebellion in some way, shape, or form. I don't think Roken is just going to be idly standing by as the Empire is doing what it's doing, especially when these rebel cells start to really come up and start to come together into a larger sect, right? I don't think that he's going to stand by when that happens. And yeah. Kenobi, when Obi-Wan Kenobi literally tells you, a general from the Clone Wars and a famed Jedi Knight says, you have leadership capabilities, you are a powerful leader, people follow you, don't stop. And he says, I don't plan to, I'm only just getting started. That's a cue for me right there that this guy's going places.
And not just that, whenever you consider there is no rebellion yet.
Yep.
And he's not doing it to start a rebellion. He's doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. Yep.
He sees what's happening and he's taking a stand to do the right thing because it is the right thing.
Because it's right. Exactly.
Not because someone told him, oh, we need to start this rebellion, or we need to be doing this, or we need to be doing that. He's just doing because it's the right thing. These people are getting attacked and repressed and killed for no other reason for being themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't be doing that.
Definitely.
So he sets this whole thing up, which, again, just out of the goodness of his heart.
Absolutely.
To create the ongoing theme of hope that is one of the cores of Star Wars. And I thought that was so really well done. Again, another excellent little side character. Like you said, a lot of these side characters were just nice treasures
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
out of this series. So I'm thrilled to see where, and hopefully we get to see more of this character. I can't see why we wouldn't, but you never know. Maybe we just get him in books.
Maybe. I mean, I'd be fine with that. I do read all the books and stuff like that. So
you being the more avid
okay
reader than
that.
myself, yes.
But I know for the more general Star Wars audiences, don't want to alienate them to potential wonderful stories that could be told about this character, and now we have some sort of connection with him. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. What is your standout moment from the entire series?
Oof. I think for me, there's really three standout moments overall. So
I'll give it to you.
I'll take it. I think the first really big standout moment for me was in part 3, which was actually the Vader fight originally. And it's not necessarily the fight itself. It's the dialogue that they have back and forth with each other. And it's that line of, what have you become? And then, I am what you made me. Like, whoa, the chills went right up my spine. That's a line that I can imagine Anakin or Darth Vader at that point was, he was probably festering on Mustafar, wondering what he would say to Obi-Wan Kenobi if he ran into him all these years later. And that was probably the line that he had agreed upon, that would be what I would say when we first meet up again. Or at least something to that extent of you created this. This is all your fault in a way.
Right.
So that was a very big and powerful moment for me watching that, because seeing Anakin burned basically alive and all of his limbs chopped off in Revenge of the Sith so many times back when I was 10, now him getting his little bit of revenge back for a fist pump moment there. You created this, you did this to me. That was a pretty big standout moment for me overall, and we use that line a lot in the house here for some reason.
I'm not going to say anything about your marriage, but that's between you and your wife.
Exactly.
And she's the couple times I've heard her on your show, she sounds like a lovely woman.
She is phenomenal. I got her on TikTok, and that's usually where we use this. She's like, "You got me on this. You did this to me." I said, "What have you become?" And I am what you made me. All right, I'll take that. I'll take it. The second moment that really stands out. Definitely. The second moment, of course, again, being a big prequel fan, is this flashback sequence. To this pre-episode 2 Attack of the Clones training sequence that is between a younger Anakin Skywalker and a younger Obi-Wan Kenobi, where they're pretty much in their Attack of the Clones garb, right? I mean, you can still tell they're a little older, just actor-wise, but, some makeup touch-up and all that stuff. Very minimal de-aging, if anything, needed for that. I'm okay with it all. It looked good to me.
I was wondering that, too. I thought, okay, they're really not using the de-aging with this. It's mostly practical effects, a.k.a. makeup, to make them look younger. They didn't, for whatever reason, use the de-aging effect that they've been using in the other stuff. And I was okay with that.
Yeah, me too.
I think in some ways you got more of the expressions and more of the acting was able to come through.
Definitely. Yeah, it seemed very natural. And you can tell these actors were felt like they just plucked them right out of 2002 and put them in the 2022 series in terms of how they portrayed these characters again, like the staccato of how they fought each other, the choreography of the fight itself was very reminiscent of what they would have done in the prequel era. So just that overall, but not only the fight and the look of it all, because it was great seeing that imagery once again. It was the meaning of that fight and what it meant for the series overall, and how it really distilled as a character, what Anakin Skywalker and subsequently Darth Vader is too, right? Like the dialogue they have back and forth, right? Anakin's need for victory blinds him. He can't see the larger picture overall because he needs to prove himself. He has this desire for victory, and it's a lesson that obviously Anakin and Darth Vader still has yet to learn, because it affects later on in part 5, the juxtaposition of it all. He's focusing entirely on Kenobi. He only cares about Kenobi when he could have taken out the entire base in the larger picture, but his need to best Kenobi, his need to prove himself and take over his master, and that hurdle, that this person that has been, I say this a lot, Vader sees Kenobi as the bane of his existence, right? He's put all of his anger and rage into this one person. He has blamed him for everything that happens. He blames him for why he was treated poorly as a Jedi, why they withheld information from him, why he couldn't save Padme, why Padme's dead, why he's stuck in this coffin, basically, why he's just a no arms, no legs shell that has to be in a bacta tank anytime. He's chained to this machine, this clunky Frankenstein-esque monster robotic machine that he's tied to. All of that is blamed into this one person instead of reflecting on, wow, I probably put myself into the situation, didn't I? the healthy way to
Maybe I went wrong somewhere.
Maybe it was me. Maybe I should have done something differently along the way. I don't know. We could go on and on about that one, but that need for him to be victorious against this and to take out and to make Kenobi suffer, right, blinds him to everything else that is going on, and it's why they're able to escape. Why they're in Part 6. It's why Kenobi is able to best Vader at the end of the day. He's unable to see the larger picture, and that is his ultimate downfall. It's a lesson that, frankly, he never really learns, I would say, until Return of the Jedi, when he one-ups the Emperor by doing the unexpected.
Yep.
And of course, Luke does the unexpected first and then too, and it kind of gives him, I would say, the motivation and the belief that he can do this. But that fight sequence means overall is really powerful to me. And then finally, of course, I think we would all say probably that Vader Obi-Wan fight sequence in Part 6, I would say, but more specifically, it's when the part of his helmet is exposed and you see Hayden Christensen.
Yes.
You see his face, you see the scars of it all. You hear him talk to Obi-Wan and what that means for the character overall, for Obi-Wan, I would say specifically. Now, I know there's a lot of theories online and stuff like that about, like, is Anakin in there? What parts of this is Anakin speaking? What parts is Vader talking? I know the lighting does a lot of it's really open for interpretation. So I think I will let that up to each person to decide on their own if they think it's Vader the entire time, if it's a little bit of Anakin here and there. Right. I think all these opinions are valid. I think it's great. I love the discourse surrounding it. But the thing to me here is, like, this is literally Kenobi's chance to say, I'm sorry, right? This is him to look at the thing that he has harbored all this guilt for, the thing that obviously it haunts it. We've seen it. It haunts his dreams, right? In the earlier episodes, he's haunted by this. He was confronted by this thing that he considered to be his greatest failure. The boy that he basically was a father figure to that turned to the dark side, that caused all this turmoil and destruction, destroyed the family that he had, and put him on this solitude path, right? He's able to say, I'm sorry for everything that happened. And then inadvertently, I don't think that this was really the plan. I think Vader was trying to, like, showcase his power in this sequence, but inadvertently he says, like, I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. He's basically saying, you didn't do this to me. I did, right? You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. Which is opposite
than what he said in 3, yes.
Definitely. He's like, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did. And then, of course, he does that the same way I'm going to do it to you, right? And, that's a really powerful moment to me. And it's also, I think it explains, too, why in the original trilogy, why, in my belief, in my understanding, and my, interpretations of the Anakin Darth Vader characters, that there are two beings in one, right? There's Anakin and there's Darth Vader. They're not the same person to me, at least. So that's why he's able. Says. Okay. I agreed. I know. I will. George would say otherwise, I would think. So
I think many people would, and I think that scene would say other than what Hayden said, that they are the dual nature. There's that duality of two in that one person.
Exactly.
And I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and so dual nature. Basically, this is Obi-Wan being absolved of the sins of the past. This is that final nail in the coffin of him being able to move on, right? This is that last thing that he needed to confront. This is the last bit of fear and worry and doubt in his life. And he's able to realize that, like, all right, Anakin is the reason for why he did this. He put himself in that position. I could have maybe done things differently, but that's in the past now. Like, at the end of the day, he caused this turmoil for himself, and he's the only one that can turn himself back from this, right? And which is eventually what happens later on. Like, he comes back. He chooses to come back, right? He's not at a point where he's able to come back or wants to come back, which I think symbolically is really interesting too, because Kenobi's able to get a piece of the helmet off. Ahsoka later in season 2 of Rebels is able to get a piece of that helmet off.
On the other side.
On the other side, of course, too. Yep. But at the end of the day, in Return of the Jedi, it is Luke Skywalker ultimately through his merciful sacrifice that is able to lift the remaining parts of the full helmet off, I guess, if you want to say it that way, right?
You know what? I never looked at it that way. That the symbolism of the breakature of the helmet, that getting little pieces of here, but Luke being able to fully remove it and liberate. Brilliant.
Yeah, I'm glad I could impose some thematic wisdom on you here.
Well, see, and I was going to go back to what you were saying just before about the drive of Anakin / Darth Vader of focusing the negative on Kenobi, that Kenobi is the reason for everything. And it's that fine line between love and hate that, again, an age-old literature theme, that to love someone that much, but it doesn't take a lot to just cross that line to hate someone or to blame them for the reasoning of X.
Totally.
Whatever the story may be, in this case being his downfall, his everything that went wrong in his life is because of Kenobi, not because of can't take the turn it inward, so you turn everything outwards and you find someone even has nothing to do with it or very little, but since you have such that bond and such that relationship with that person, that they become the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's and something that does play out throughout this series, throughout everything with them. And it's the way that scene is done. And I'm talking about in the battle in episodes part 6. Not so much the battle, but that last part where they're having that exchange, and Vader finally says, "It wasn't you, it was all me," and finally accepting the blame or taking it inwards, which is a huge step for that character, more character growth. But how it was done again, Deborah Chow, just the way that it was shot, the way it was presented, in the changing of the voice and the camera angle and the eyes and everything, just telling the story beyond. It's not just telling you with words. It's not just telling you visually. It's using everything.
Yeah.
Visuals, audio, the written word, everything is telling this story, and that is just fantastic cinema.
Totally. Yep.
So that I think she has proven herself. Bring it to Deborah Chow as a spectacular director in this medium. What she did in Mandalorian was good. This was beyond my expectations as far as a cinematic event.
Yeah, agreed.
In a vision, the vision that she had for this, and the way that she was able to translate that vision onto the screen is something that I am excited for, whatever her next project being.
Me too. I hope it's something in the Star Wars realm. I would love to see it.
You got to keep her.
You got to do something to keep her happy. Yep. Keep her in the Lucasfilm family some way. And to your point too, I think it's fascinating how, to my knowledge, I think this is the only Disney Plus series that has had a consistent one director across all the episodes. And I think a lot of the criticism from some of those, especially the MCU shows, is like some episodes are more favorable because there are certain directors, right, doing those episodes. And maybe they would benefit more from having a consistent voice across from beginning to end. And I think we're seeing that with Kenobi for sure. It's that the consistency is definitely there from start to finish.
Right. Yeah, and you could be right. You could be onto something there. A lot of shows do that, and that's not anything abnormal as far as TV series go. And that's one thing. If there is a flaw to point out for the prequels or the sequel trilogy, is that in the middle you not only switch the director, which George did that with the original ones, but you switch the writers, and that that's where you get some of the change in voice and tone and how the presentation of the whole thing. Here you keep the same writers. In this one, you keep the same director. Now, it's a lot of work for one director to do a 6-hour project.
Yeah.
Whenever you're talking, even the directors who do movies, that's 2-3 hours at most. 3 hours and 15 minutes. That's, this is almost doubling that. Whenever you get also taking in the fact that that's the final product.
Yeah.
That's, not taking into the effect of how much was edited out. And there's always at least maybe 10 minutes per episode, maybe more, depending on the event. And so, sometimes you see just quick cuts, but that quick cut could have been a 15-minute segment that you're already seeing 30 seconds of.
Agreed. Yeah.
So that it's a huge burden. It's a lot for one director to take on, which is typically why you spread it out. And then also you get the different viewpoints, and it changes up the tone and the pacing, and also helps keep the audience interested in it.
Yeah.
So it's because think of The Mandalorian. If we just had Jon Favreau telling the whole thing, you would have had some of the beautiful ones that name escaping me. Guy who's doing Love and Thunder.
Taika Waititi.
Thank you. Some of his beautiful work, and same thing with how bad I am with names. Girl from Jurassic World.
I was gonna say Bryce Dallas Howard.
Thank you. And I think she did some fantastic episodes. Again, she's establishing herself as more than just an actor. She has established herself as, following in her father's footsteps as a bona fide director.
Yeah.
The first season was good. The second season was getting even better. Her work. So again, you're growing this next generation in-house,
literally,
of talented and capable directors. And where are we going from there? The sky again is the limit. And I think they got to play their cards close to the vest and try and keep these people around. Because I think is it always nice to get some big name actor who's done, or director who's done some of these other projects and done really well with some of these other projects? Yes, like a Taika Waititi. Okay, he talk about someone who's going to change the tone of something.
Yes, agreed.
But he also likes to get involved in his work, so he's always bringing himself into the picture somehow by playing one of those offbeat characters. He did the IG-11, who became one of my favorite characters from the first season of The Mandalorian. He does Korg in the Thor movies. So he brings himself in there. But that's, as far as Star Wars goes, that's good for a little bit. But how we will see how he does on the full the movie thing, and I'm sure it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be a very different Star Wars. And I think people have to accept that before going into it, because it's going to be how he would tell Star Wars, which there's nothing wrong with that. You just can't expect, oh, it's not the New Hope. No, it's not going to be the New Hope. It's not going to be Rogue One. It's going to be its own thing. But we've been introduced to his style already now in The Mandalorian. So hopefully, the ones that like to proclaim themselves as the ultimate fans. I use that term loosely. I'm sorry. Realize that. Oh wait, this is just like these episodes of Mandalorian and whatever else he's done between then, and it's now in Star Wars and it is okay. Yeah, the directing wise, the vision between marrying the special effects and just the way everything was shot. I did have a problem. What was it? One of the episodes. I don't know, it was either the time or day. I'm not saying that was a problem. The problem being that it was a very dark episode. I think it might have been 3. Where I had trouble seeing who was on the screen. Because I'm watching on my TV in my living room, and it's just like there's other ambient light in the room, so it's just like I'm trying to make out what's going on because everything is so dark.
Yeah.
And that happens. But it's I think she did a phenomenal job. I'm gonna skip over talking about this one character, and so I'm sure you said you've listened to episodes before. We do this thing. Who is your MVP character of the series?
Ooh, okay.
Who would you say was the standout character for the entire series?
Ooh, the
Be
standout
little part,
character?
big part, whoever you deem it necessary or worthy.
Standout.
Who is worthy?
Who is worthy? Well, let me tell you, I'm surprised we haven't talked about this character to this point yet in the series or in this episode.
This is probably why I haven't talked about this particular character, not assuming anything.
But a younger Leia is really, for me, the big standout. Like watching this girl who was first kidnapped, we start to see the bits and pieces that make up the Carrie Fisher Leia that we all know and love from the original trilogy and then the sequel trilogy too. We start to see all those aspects of this character form through this bond that she creates with Obi-Wan Kenobi over the course of this wacky, wild, crazy adventure that they go on, where she starts off having no idea where she's going in life, kind of a prankster, jokester, looking towards the horizon. What is proverbially her twin sons, right? What is she's looking out for this adventure she wants to be on. She wants to go off to a distant planet and go off on some pirating adventure or something like that. She wants to do something differently than what her parents have set forth for her. And towards the end, she not only realizes that she can do good in the world, she's enhanced by all the people that she's met along the way and these relationships that she's fostered through this tale. She learns that leadership comes in all different shapes and forms and sizes, right? And the inspiration that Obi-Wan Kenobi gives her by believing in her, empowering her to succeed, to be this person that goes into the wires, right? Even when Roken's like, "What? You can't do that. We can't send a little girl in there and do this." No, Obi-Wan Kenobi says, "Do you trust me? Well, I trust her. Let her do it." That full belief in her is really astounding. She believes in herself, I think, towards the end of it all. She's much more confident in herself and her abilities. She believes that she's going to make an impact in the world one day. That is, I think, the little Leia is really a standout. And of course, we got to see the actress at Celebration during the premiere. She got a huge standing ovation from the crowd, rightfully so. She was just such a delight, and the way she was able to bring that character to life, interact with both Obi-Wan Kenobi, Bail Organa, her mother Brea, or adopted mother Brea Organa, just how she interacted with other characters throughout the series. Like it's had this, all the pieces of Leia again are there, whether it be trying to escape and every time that she was bounded up in some way, whether it be by Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist or or when
Thank
she's
God he was
being
fully dressed.
exactly, or whether she's being interrogated by an inquisitor, right? She's always looking for a way to one up the situation, or thinking through the larger picture at hand of how she can escape, right? Which is something I fully believe about the Leia character on the Death Star. Is like, I firmly believe that she's formulating a plan to get off of that herself. She didn't need Luke Skywalker or Han Solo to pop in there and to come rescue her. She was forming a plan on her own right. She was waiting for some stormtrooper to come in. She was going to knock him out and then escape on her own way, right? All that is there. Her accepting that she can do a lot more good in the world than what she's doing currently. Like, this is all impactful to me and very powerful stuff overall. So Leia is my MVP overall.
Well, I definitely agreed with you. As everyone heard last week, I same thing. I watching Vivian's portrayal here makes me want to go back. I mean, I heard good things about it. I want to go back and watch Bird Box because I'd love to see her how she did in that.
Yeah.
Just realizing recently that it's the same actress. I spoke so much about her last week, but you are absolutely. She did a fantastic job pulling off that. I mean, physically, you can do so much, but the maturity that she brought to it. She only turned 10 in June.
Yeah. I mean, her career is only going to take off after this point. Yeah.
Playing up in age. She did such a good job, and definitely worthy of all the accolades that she's getting. The way she embodied that character does so much credit to Carrie Fisher, honoring that character and playing it so respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very bright and young budding actress or actor, whatever the proper terminology now is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But she does so well, and I look forward to what she does next. And I'll discuss this with you because I don't think I brought it up with anybody else. So Kathleen Kennedy now has recently announced they will no longer be recasting roles with younger actors, actresses to portray characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was wondering here, though, at what point is that starting? Does that mean going forward? Because you could always say, well, this is, I will not go back and recast, say, not Han, think of somebody that they haven't done yet. I won't go back and recast John Boyega's Finn character. I won't recast a younger actor to play his part, in some before New Hope story. But you've already casted Han Solo, you've already casted Lando Calrissian, now Luke and Leia, and all these other characters. You've already cast them, so at this point you could still use them going forward because you're not recasting them. You're just rehiring those actors to continue a part that they've now already established.
Mm-hmm.
Which gives us, considering that Lando is something that's been milled about hopefully in the works still, but it's something that has definitely been a topic of discussion of something that they want to pursue with Michael B. Jordan reprising that role. So you can't say that we're not using characters from the past, which something I know that you're personally hoping for as well, and so am I, is continuation of Solo, and bringing that actor back and continuing forward. And I personally think, as a Disney Plus series, everyone would come to love and accept this role and this actor in that role, and where we can go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Kenobi has proven that we can do this. Why can't we do this with Solo? We can definitely do it with Lando. And the cast of characters that we've already reestablished with younger casting, and continuing expanding the universe. Something that I like about Mandalorian, I liked about Book of Boba Fett is we're getting away. We got away from the Jedi's and particularly the Skywalker storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Kenobi brought us back to that, which was fine for Kenobi. But I like how we're fleshing out the galaxy's a big place.
Yeah.
Seeing more about it. Something that, and I'm sure you heard me talk about this on Book of Boba Fett. I wanted more of the crime, the underworld
Mm-hmm.
of the galaxy. We get tidbits here and there, and now this is a series that I thought could have brought in more into it. And unfortunately, it didn't go exactly as I was hoping with that. You got more just Boba Fett's redemption storyline, which was great. But there's so much to tell in the underworld story that that's something we could focus on. Something that I'm particularly looking forward to Andor. Again, it's not Jedi centric. It's rest of the world centric. Something that they're doing well in Bad Batch. Again, it's telling the rest of what's going on in the rest of the universe.
Yeah.
Yep, that's all right. Again, just going on one of my little rants there.
All good. I'm here for it all.
What are you looking forward to in, your choice of directions? Do you want to see more of some of these characters that they've already recasted and bring forward? Do you think that's something that they will potentially still do? Or what direction do you think Star Wars is going to be heading?
I think in regards to Kathleen Kennedy's comments, I'm a little hurt by them, I would say, in a way. I think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
I think that comment alone, it's a misunderstanding or a misallocation of what went wrong with Solo. If anything, like obviously it underperformed at the box office. I think we'll all agree with that. But I don't think that was because of Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. At least you can't put entirely the 100% that as the sole reason why, right? It's because the film came out so close to The Last Jedi, right? They didn't even have a trailer for the movie until February, a few months before it came out. So they weren't even able to promote it the same time that they would have, or at least the same promotion schedule that they would have with other films. And it also came out like a couple weeks after Infinity War, and it was in between that and I believe Deadpool 2. So like at a time when people aren't really going to the box office and they have to like hand pick where they're going to, right? It got slogged into the mess that is the summer blockbuster season, where only a few handful emerges victorious. And it might have been the hubris of thinking that Star Wars is immune to all of that. But, I think if it was in December, we'd probably be having a different conversation right now if they would have released it, pushed it back. Right? But I know Bob Iger is very candid about that in his book, The Ride of a Lifetime, where he was the one pushing that Solo stays in that May release spot, where Kathleen Kennedy and others at Lucasfilm were, saying we should push it to December.
Move it. Right.
But he said, nope, we're going to do that. And, he's fallen on that sword a bit. So, I think that is more the lesson to take from this is market your films appropriately with a lot of lead time and don't like oversaturate your audience. Don't compete against yourself and the own Disney family, right? Compete against the other studios and stuff like that. Put your product up against other things. Don't compete against your very, very successful Avengers franchise that is also coming out just before it. Right. So I think that's more the takeaway. So that may be the policy right now.
And it's 4 years later too.
It's definitely so. Like I don't know, maybe I think as clearly what we've seen with Kenobi is that there is an interest when these characters mean a lot to us. I'm hoping that they change this internal policy as maybe a year or two goes by, right? I don't think it's going to stick forever because they're going to want to keep telling stories with these characters. And if they already have an actor ready to go and they're available, why not go with it, right? I think to your point too, it's hard to think of an actor or a character that hasn't already been recast as a younger version of themselves, or maybe even an older version. I think they would just go with the same actor if they were going for an older version. So I don't think there's any really like big legacy characters anymore that requires a younger recasting. So I think this is mostly in regards to the potential of a Solo 2, which I think there's a lot of fan fervor for it right now. At least at Star Wars Celebration, when they brought Ron Howard out to talk about the Willow series that's coming up, there were a lot of people in the audience yelling, "Make Solo 2." When he was up at the live stage where they were live streaming conversations with these creators and actors, they brought Ron up because he's working with this documentary that they're doing for Disney Plus about ILM. A lot of people were yelling "Make Solo 2" there, and people were applauding Solo and stuff like that. So
Good.
Obviously they're moving forward with like potentially a Lando series that's in the works. I'm very intrigued about, if that could potentially serve as a quote unquote Solo 2, depending on when that takes place in the timeline. I know they constantly are doing like Han comics and at quote unquote when the Solo 2 timeline would be taking place. So I don't know if that's testing the waters right now. But I think if the right story is there, I don't think that they will hinder themselves from the creativity that is being put forth in front of them. It just seemed to me like a knee-jerk reaction to a question that she probably wasn't expecting in the interview. That'd be my initial takeaway.
Something else, and I don't think people were looking at this angle either, that I was thinking of. That again, looking at one aspect that, as we just discussed, most of the characters have been recasted already. Now, we also have situations like we've just seen in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett with what's the technology that they use for Luke, where you have a body double, not a recasting, a body double, walking around with Mark Hamill's face on him.
Yeah, the deepfake stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And is she more confident in using that going forward?
Yeah, maybe.
That's just a different different perspective on it that maybe I think a lot of people weren't thinking. We'll use more of that going forward because it worked great in Book of Boba Fett.
It really did. I wonder how much that costs, though, too. That could factor into it as well.
True. It's just, well, the more that they use it, the more it becomes a readily available technology. It brings the cost down.
Mm-hmm.
The less you use it, more specialized technology it is, the more expensive it will be. Just like, again, the green screens of the day was very expensive, and then it became more and more popular, and anyone and everyone was using it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of even just regular sitcom TV shows outside the windows of a lot of the apartments that the show was shot in was a green screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's yet to be seen. Just another interpretation. But on whole, I think we're in a good place. I think we're in a good place as far as Star Wars, and I am excited for where we're going from here.
Absolutely, yeah. The future is bright. I know there's an absence of Star Wars films in the pipeline. There's questions about that, but let them figure it out. Let them right the ship. Let them get the stories and the writing in place, and eventually we'll get Star Wars films in the cinema again. But in terms of the TV series, the Disney Plus series, the books, the comics, all that stuff, it's a very, very bright future for Star Wars. And if it's your first entry into the Star Wars galaxy, this is a great time to hop on. And if you're a fan that's been a part of the saga since 1977, then you're being well fed. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and if I get series produced as well as Kenobi was, I'm okay with skipping the movies for a little while.
Sure.
Because there's so much being flooded into the theaters, and the theaters is still relatively a volatile place.
Mm-hmm.
With people, comfortable, not comfortable going back. That if this means a more successful life in the Star Wars franchise, who am I to argue with that?
Exactly.
But I will leave you with this last question, Anthony. I'll let you answer this, and then I'll let you, because I know it's getting late. Um, Star Wars, is it starting to become more like Marvel? We've discussed this many times on the show. Is it starting to become more like Marvel, where you have to not only have seen the films, but now watch the TV shows to understand characters and references and events that are happening? Case in point, Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
If someone hasn't watched Rebels, when the Inquisitors show up, they're not really introduced. You get a quick glance over of who they are. But if you weren't familiar with them from Rebels, you have no idea who these characters are. And they do have a somewhat significant point. Do you think this is becoming more and more of the case, that you need to be a all consumer of Star Wars to be able to enjoy it, where before it was just the films and it was a little bit easier to follow along and understand who characters were?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think at this point it is a definitive yes to the TV series, is whether it be the live action ones or the animated ones. I think those are must watch content for any Star Wars fan moving forward. I think even as early as 2016 with Rogue One, Lucasfilm made that a point and a priority, right? With the introduction of Saw Gerrera in Rogue One, who was a prominent character in an arc in the Clone Wars. That's where he was introduced, and that's where you get a lot of that backstory. Now, it wasn't pivotal to watching the movie, right? You could watch it and then go back and see, oh, he was in Rebels, oh, he was in this, but it wasn't like essential to the plot of it all.
Yeah, because I didn't know who he was, because I'd never seen Clone Wars before that.
Right, but then if I may ask, did that inspire you to inquire more about those, and then maybe you started dipping your toes? Nope.
No, at that point, no. What made me go back and want to watch Clone Wars was Ahsoka.
Well, everyone's got their entry point. I'm glad she was for you.
And she's, because that's a character I wanted to find more out about, and that was my way of finding out. I didn't realize that he was in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it was a great Easter egg when you got to him eventually, right? But especially then, even further on with the Maul reveal in Solo, right? That was a definitive point to me in the cinema where I was like, all right, these are must-watch stories in order to understand what they're doing in the live action realm, at least in terms of the cinema now too, right? Now, I know you can probably, people would probably argue against, well, Solo technically isn't a part of the Skywalker saga. Well, in our household, we watched that chronologically, right? Solo's right there in between episode 3 and Rogue One, and now Kenobi will fit in there too, right? So when we do our proverbial rewatches of the entire saga, that will fit in there. And of course, the Maul reveal at the end is really important, because I know there were a lot of people in my screening when I saw it the first time, and they were like, "Who's that? He's back? How's that possible? I saw him get cut in half in the Phantom Menace." And I turned back to somebody, he's like, "Someone needs to watch Clone Wars." So the fact that they were able to make that big leap and trust the audience to know that this is a story bit that is part of canon, and then B, trust the audience to go back and absorb those stories is really impactful. And now, even with the fact that there's an Ahsoka series in the pipeline coming out, and from that little trailer that they showcased at Celebration, we know there's a Sabine Wren coming up in that. There's going to be a Hera in that show. Chopper's going to be there. These are pivotal characters from Rebels. That if you really want to enjoy the Ahsoka series for everything that it is, I doubt they're going to go through every character's back history and story in that series. It already exists. Go watch that. Go take the deep dive into the wonderfulness that is Star Wars Rebels, and then you'll be really able to enjoy. I mean, frankly, I forgot to mention this, Cad Bane too in Book of Boba Fett, right? Another character that did that leap from the animated space into the live action one. So, as we get further on in the Star Wars storytelling universe that they're doing now, whether it be Disney Plus or in the films, they are trusting the audience to know all of Star Wars, and they're not differentiating between, all right, this is a TV universe. The stories that are told here doesn't impact the movies and the live action series and whatnot. But now that they're fully embracing all of this, this is really a great time. And frankly, for someone that's been keeping up with all this from the beginning, it's been really wonderful to like be rewarded for my energy and efforts over the years. Or I was telling people, you should watch this. There's a lot of great stuff, and they're like, but it's never gonna matter for the movies. Like they won't alienate the audience. And I was like, well, one day they might. And with that,
you even have Hondo in the theme parks.
Great case point too. Hondo being a part of Smuggler's Run, right? Wonderful example there. And then they're like, who's Hondo? Go back, watch Clone Wars, watch Rebels, right?
That time I did do that. I did go, okay, who is this Hondo guy? He's voiced by the amazingly talented Jim Cummins. And
Absolutely.
so I researched that character and looked at him like, this guy is awesome. We need more of him too, and he's one of the characters I voted on that I want to see him and come make that leap from animated and theme park now to live action. Definitely.
Again, the sky's the limit. There's an opportunity for these characters at every avenue, and
absolutely.
So, frankly, again, with the Ahsoka show coming up too, and Dave Filoni's involvement with that, just get ready. Get ready. There's going to be a lot more down the pipeline.
Oh, indeed. In Filoni, we trust.
Indeed. I was 5 feet away from him at Celebration. Not actually at Celebration even. It was at Downtown Disney. Me and my wife were going into the Grand Californian Hotel. They have a special entrance there to access Downtown Disney. We were just trying to escape the crowds and wanted to go into their wonderful lounge that they have in there for a quick drink. And my wife was like, why is there 7 cast members around? Why would there just be 7 cast members walking together? And then she looked and she's like, oh, there's Favreau and Filoni. She saw the cowboy hat and all that stuff. And she's like, look who it is. And I was like, it's them.
I had a similar situation once when I worked in the Animal Kingdom. And I was walking back from break and I just saw a bunch of people in suits walking by me. Why are they surrounded by everyone's standing around this really short guy? And it's Roy Disney.
Oop, that'll do it. He's royalty in these parts.
Oh yes. Oh, God rest his soul. That was just one of those special little moments. That I didn't speak a word to him, didn't say anything, but just the fact that just being that close to someone so pivotal to my fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy for you that you had a similar moment with two such. They've earned our trust.
Absolutely. Let them continue to create. That's all I can say.
Yes, indeed. Anthony, please tell everyone where they need to be looking to find your spectacular show, which I listen every week. You do a great job. Keep it up. If you're not listening to Force Ghost Conversation, be sure to be listening to this guy in Force Ghost Conversation. He is a breath of fresh air in the podcast universe. Please tell everyone where to find you and on your wonderful social media presence as well.
Well, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you listening and for the kind words there. It means a lot. I mean, this is a podcast that really inspires me to do what I do week to week. So really, kudos to you as well.
It got me blushing.
Well, you can find Force Ghost Conversations anywhere that you can really find podcasts. So it'll be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. If there's a podcast site, we're probably on it in some way, shape, or form. And if not, reach out to me and we'll try and get our way on there in some way, shape, or form. So if you liked what you heard here, be sure to check us out there. Force Ghost Conversations is your home for cozy, deep dive discussions into all things Star Wars. So on a weekly basis, we talk about the movies, the books, the comics, the TV series, all that. That's your home for all that. So come on over and check us out. You can also follow us on all the social media channels. We're on Twitter at Force Ghost Pod, and then Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can just search Force Ghost Conversations, and we will appear.
Awesome. Definitely a worthy follow on everything, and some nice TikTok content as well, versus some of the other crazy TikTok content.
Try to keep it fun and interesting for you over there.
Oh, you do a good job. So, thank you again for coming on. Thank you so much. Thanks again to Anthony from Force Ghost Conversation for joining me. What an honor. What a pleasure. We've been working to get this done for quite some time, so finally get to have Anthony King on here. Great guy. Definitely highly suggest checking out Force Ghost Conversations on your podcast feed. Good time. Good content. I completely forgot while we're recording to ask Anthony what was his grade. Between 1 and 10, what was his grade of Kenobi, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney+. And if you know Anthony, this would not come as a surprise. If you don't know Anthony, then this shouldn't come as a surprise, but it may. He gave it to infinity and beyond. So, mixing of cultures here, but to infinity and beyond. So, 10 plus. He absolutely loved it. Particularly, he's a fan of the prequels. That was, like he said, that was his movies. So the fact that he got Kenobi, he got Ewan McGregor as Kenobi, he had Hayden Christensen back as Vader. A beautiful marriage of everything that he loved as a child growing up to now being an adult and still getting more of it. I completely understand where he's going from on there, and kudos to him. Kudos to all of you. What was your grade? What is your grade of the Kenobi series altogether? I think last time I asked what was your grade on episode 6. Now I want to know on the series altogether. Let us know. Join on the conversation on our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Disney Marvels Podcast, on Instagram at Disney Marvels Podcast, TikTok at Disney Marvels Podcast, and on the Twitter at Disney Marvels. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we're going to be starting our live. Yes, our summer live episodes will be starting this weekend, I believe. I believe I am working out in my schedule, my personal schedule, to start it this weekend. So make sure you are subscribed to there. Turn on the notifications. This way, when we go live, you will know about it. And you want to join in on those conversations because it's where we get to interact directly. Instead of you just listening, you get to join in on the conversations this way. It's a little more of a lax atmosphere. If you don't get to be part of the live, that's fine. I will post the audio to the feed as well shortly thereafter, usually the Monday after. Saturday nights are usually when we go live. Anyway, or you can be part of the regular show. You can do this by leaving a voice message through the Anchor app or Anchor.fm website, or record a message electronically on your smartphone, your tablet, or your computer and email it to disneymarvels@gmail.com. You could also email any questions or suggestions you may have to that address as well. Don't forget to check out the latest Disney Marvel blogs over at disneymarvels.blogspot.com. Links to all these are in the show notes. I do want to let you know now, little inside information. we are going to be doing some work on our online presence. I am working to bring back the Disney Marvels page. That went away a little over a year ago. I've been quite bitter about that, but I am in the process of trying to get something new going again. The Facebook group will still be there, but I'm going to try and shift everything over to the Disney Marvels Facebook page. It's going to be an official page again. And stay tuned to the group, stay tuned to the podcast when this will happen. I will try to let everyone know anywhere and everywhere possible. I want to thank you for your time. I know how little time we all have these days, and the fact that we get to spend some of it together means a lot to me. Means a lot to everyone over here at Disney Marvels Podcast. I cannot thank you, and we cannot thank you enough. But if you could please go over to Apple Podcasts, go over to Spotify, and leave a rating. Leave a rank, leave a rating for the show. We have all 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts right now. We truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I cannot believe how blessed I am that I get to do this time and time again, and this is the response that you guys give to us. And thank you. But keep it coming. The more reviews that we get, particularly the 5-star ones, the more Apple and Spotify will do their part promoting our show. And that it really does help out, because the more people in this family, the better it is. Won't believe in a big Disney family, and so do I. Plus, if you can't do the Apple or the Spotify, that's okay. Share it out on the social networks. Share it on Twitter, Facebook, whatever social media you use, and whichever streaming service you use. Share a link so other people can discover the show as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the show while you're at it. This way you always know when new episodes are posted. And while you're at it, consider becoming a premium subscriber to really help the show out. Movie reviews, equipment, it really will help the show out. You can do this over at anchor.fm/DisneyMarvels/support or find our Patreon page. You can also check out our merchandise shop to get yourself some fun Disney Marvel podcast stuff there as well. New stuff will be coming shortly. I have a few things in the works as we talk. You can find links to all these in the show notes as well, because remember, this show is brought to you by listeners like you. Whatever you're facing out there, whatever troubles, whatever darkness, and I know these are troubled times for a lot of us. And things aren't not that they were ever easy, but things just seem to keep getting more and more difficult. Don't give up. Don't give in. I know it's easy for me to say, you are not alone. And at times, and many times, you probably feel that you are. But believe me, there are people who care about you. There are people who love you. And there are people that are willing to help you. They may be a relative. They may be a close friend. They may be a complete stranger. Never give up. Never give in. Be your own hero. And step forward. Let your light shine for the world to see. Because you are beautiful. You are special. There is no one else like you. And the world needs you. Now I'd like to end this week's show with a quote from Walt Disney himself. Being that it was just Independence Day, recently I was invited to see a show on America. And as I sat there watching and listening, I felt both proud and thrilled. Thrilled with the voices, thrilled with the sounds, proud of the group of 100 talented young Americans singing about our country. The songs that made me proud of being an American. Again, that was Walt Disney. Thank you again for listening, everyone, and I'll see you next time.